Hello class, this is a video tutorial on the addition and subtraction of fractions. The primary idea that I need you all to remember is that fractions can only add or subtract if they have the same denominator. In this video, we're going to be looking at that principle in action. So we're going to first see how to add and subtract of the same denominators, and then we're going to look at what happens if they have different denominators. So let's get straight into it. So I want you to consider this following problem. So here we have a block which represents one whole, and I've divided it up into fifths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want you to think about this following. If I have 2 fifths, so here is 2 fifths, I'm going to shade those. That's 1. And that's 2 fifths. And if I add another fifth, so adding is as if we're shading another one. So there's my 2 fifths, and there is my 1 fifth. How many fifths does it give me in total? Well, it's pretty obvious that we can count that as 3 out of the 5 shaded. So that's 3 out of the 5. Same thing when it comes to a different, it doesn't matter how the denominator works. So here we have, let's say we have 3 eighths. So here's 1, 2, and 3. And if I add, or if I shade another, let's say 1/8, let's shade one more eighth, that gives me, well, 1, 2, 3, 4 shaded out of a total of 8 portions. And as we saw in previous videos, this is equivalent to 1/2, because half of everything here is shaded. And this is the principle that we work with when we add and subtract denominators with the same add or subtract fractions with the same denominator. Now let's take a look at what happens when we subtract. So I'm just going to modify the 2 that we had. Well, instead of addition, okay, let's take a look at what happens if we subtract it here. Okay, so if we started with 2 fifths shaded, so here is 2 fifths of our block shaded. 1 fifth means to remove that shading. So if we remove this shading here, how many is in total being shaded? Well, 2 fifths minus 1 fifth, well, that's 2 minus 1, that's 1 fifth shaded. Similarly, if we had, we'll just change this around a little bit. If we had 4 eighths, so here's our 4 eighths, and if we subtracted 1/8, so here's 4 eighths, and if we subtracted, or if we erased one of the shadings, how many is left that's shaded? Well, that gives us only 3 eighths. And we can see that very easily, that if they have the same denominator, we just focus on the numerator. 4 minus 1 is 3, and the denominator stays the same. Let's take a few examples of that. So let's say if we had, let's say we had 1/4 plus 1/4. Well, focusing only on the numerators, well, first they have the same denominator, so we can just add the numerators. So 1 plus 1 gives me 2 over, these do not add, they remain the same denominator. So we can simplify this to be 1/2. Get a few more examples in here. If we had 2/5 plus 1/5, well, that's very simple. They have the same denominator. 2 plus 1 gives me 3, and the denominator stays the same. This we cannot simplify. Let's take a look at a few more examples. Let's say we had 3/8 plus 1/8. Once again, they have the same denominator, so we can just add the numerators together. 3 plus 1 is 4, and the denominator remains the same. Let's get a few more examples in here. Let's say we had 3/7 plus 2/7. Well, that's still the same thing. That will give us, well, they have the same denominator. 3 plus 2 is 5/7. And it works the same with subtraction. If we had 3/4 minus 1/4, since they have the same denominator, we can focus just on the numerator. 3 minus 1 is 2, and the denominator remains the same. This can be simplified into 1/2. Another example, let's say we had 4/5 minus 2/5. Once again, the denominators are the same. 4 minus 2 gives us 2, and the denominators remain the same. Let's take a look at a few more. Let's take a look at 5/6 minus 1/6. Once again, denominators are the same. 5 minus 1 is 4/6. Dividing both numerator and denominator by 2 simplifies it to become 2/3. And one last example. If we had 9/10 subtracted by 3/10, once again, denominators are the same. We focus only on the numerator. 9 minus 3 is 6/10. Simplifying this fraction, dividing both of it by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So this is the beginning, well, focusing only on the addition or subtraction of fractions with the same denominator. We'll look into this one, what happens if they have different denominators, in another video. Best of luck.